and senior military correspondent at the Jerusalem Post. Thank you for being with us. Do you have any fair expectations to what you think Mr. Netanyahu is going to say? We are expecting him to speak, as I said, in the next hour or so.
Look, it's speculation until we see it. And I think what he would have said 3 days ago is different than, 3 hours ago, because the situation is so dynamic right now between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon. But basically, I think you can look at a thrust of arguments that say Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, Iran, because Israel sees Iran as sort of the mastermind behind all of this. Beware, watch out. We're going to keep striking you until you agree to ceasefires on our terms. Hamas in Gaza needs to return, hostages that they're holding. Hezbollah needs to agree to observe UN Security Council Resolution 1701 from 2006, which said that they shouldn't be in southern Lebanon. And of course, they've been in southern Lebanon in violation of that the entire time. So he's going to try to push those messages, increase Israel's legitimacy within the world. And he's going to be speaking to Israel's domestic audience. Israelis have a lot of pride that Netanyahu speaks English very well. And so even some of his critics say that when he goes internationally, he sort of puts puts himself forward in a very powerful, strong way in terms of the domestic political scene.
Do you think there is any chance of some sort of pause in the fighting against Hezbollah at this stage or not?
Today, it seems very unlikely. Again, the situation is super dynamic. So if suddenly Hezbollah says, okay, you've hit us really hard, Israel, for the last week and a half, it's too much, we will agree to the terms. And then, they could try to break the terms later, but they'll agree to the terms now for the purposes of getting a ceasefire. Then it could happen. But I don't see that happening. I think Hassan Nasrallah, the chief of Hezbollah, is pretty dug in. He, got into this war on October 8th before, Israel did anything, to them, before Israel even invaded Gaza, right? Israel invaded Gaza 3 weeks after Nasrallah started shooting rockets at Israel. So Nasrallah wanted to put his own imprint on this. He wanted to show that he is sort of the defender or the top partner of Hamas. And it doesn't look like he's going to back off. And Israel has been waiting for years to degrade Hezbollah's, both its quantity in terms of 150,000 rockets and its quality in terms of precision rockets. And this is its chance to sort of degrade those abilities, both for now and for the future.
So does that suggest that you think there will be a ground invasion? What does that mean? And could it lead to, a full-blown war?
So I think I said dynamic already 3 times, but that's how crazy things are here. Everything changes day to day, sometimes minute to minute. Right now, at this moment in time, I think a ground invasion is likely, not in the coming days, but let's say in the coming weeks, or at the most, maybe in the coming months, just because, again, it doesn't look like the terms that Netanyahu would agree to for a ceasefire and the terms that Hezbollah would agree to for a ceasefire are going to overlap. That said, if the United States at some point brings a heavy amount of pressure on Israel, that could force Israel's hand to agree to a ceasefire, even if it doesn't want one. But you have to keep in mind, and a lot of the world doesn't remember this, 60,000 Israelis living inside the Green Line of northern Israel have been out of their homes for the entire year because Hezbollah has been rocking their homes. This isn't, any sort of disagreement according to UN resolutions. This is supposed to be part of Israel according to all views. So that is a heavy domestic political pressure on Netanyahu not to agree to a ceasefire.
What about the risk to civilians? We're already seeing civilians being killed in not only, of course, in Gaza, but now in Lebanon. And what about the risk to the loss of life of Israeli troops if they do go into Lebanon? Isn't that something that the government is worried about?
So I would say if you go back to before August 25th, I think the government and the military were extremely worried about this. On August 25th, Hezbollah tried to launch somewhere between 500 to 1,000 rockets on Israel to do very heavy damage, including to try to destroy 11 army bases, including to destroy Mossad headquarters. And Israel did a preemptive strike to stop that. That gave Israel the confidence that it has been doing the last week and a half, that maybe actually it can overcome both Hezbollah's quality in terms of precision rockets and its quantity, right? Again, 150,000 rockets is a tremendous arsenal. But so far, Israel has been able to have the upper hand on that. Now, if you have Hezbollah suddenly start hitting, mass groups of people in Haifa or Tel Aviv, that could change everything in a second. So you're right. There, these dynamics could shift. And you're right also that it's not Israel, isn't concerned about civilian harm in Lebanon. There were a number of mass evacuation notices. 500,000 Lebanese people have moved to avoid being hit. Israeli estimates, I think, are that around 70% of those killed have been Hezbollah to date. But again, that's also a dynamic situation because it's a battlefield. So I can't tell you exactly what's going to happen. But right now, the overall thrust in Israel is they're feeling more confident against Hezbollah than they have for most of the last year. And they want to sort of finally degrade it to be so that it cannot threaten Israel the way it has until now.
How could things change finally, depending on who wins the US election? Presumably, if Donald Trump wins, he would likely give more support, continued support to Benjamin Netanyahu. Do you think the government in Israel is worried about what happens if there is a Kamala Harris victory? Because is unqualified support from the US definitely going to continue if Israel continues to escalate?
That's a great question. The one interesting thing about Trump when it comes to this is that he has said he supports Israel, but he wants Israel to sort of finish the war fast, do whatever it needs to do. I don't know that he cares so much about international humanitarian law. Democrats, Kamala Harris certainly care a lot about international humanitarian law, but then he wants the war to end. He's said it, I think, 4 or 5 times. So it could, there could be some spurt if Trump is elected where Israel is sort of given the green light to sort of do more, so to speak, but needing to wrap it up before Inauguration Day. If Kamala Harris is elected, I think that you'll see just continued pressure that there's been the whole time from the Biden administration, but maybe she'll put heavier pressure because the election will be over with. She won't need to worry about alienating Americans who are, very supportive of Israel. So there could be, in either of those situations, I think, Israel, again, might have a limited amount of time to act, but I don't see this war being able to go on at this level for several months, certainly not past Inauguration Day.
Yonah Bob from the Jerusalem Post, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
There is more, of course, on the BBC website. We have a live page running on this, and we'll be looking ahead to the speech of Benjamin Netanyahu at the UN in New York, which is due in about an hour and a half or so. We are going to keep right across all those developments for you. Around the world.